issues affecting animals and pet owners today, how to avoid common problems, and how to extend the quality of life for your cherished companions. As a community advocate, I will also discuss important social issues that affect our city. I plan to showcase organizations and heroes who are doing amazing things to help others. Remember to tune in every Tuesday morning at 10, starting soon.
Do you want to relive the golden days of Stockton? Join Nate Knott on Stockton Alive every first and third Monday at 6 p.m. Tune into thevoiceofstockton.org.
This is a production for the voice of San Joaquin.
Porque nos vamos a enlazar
con el mero, el gallo de Zacatecas.
That's right, homeboy.
el de Guayá.
You got it, homeboy. Ahí les voy.
Dicen que soy poderoso, yo solo soy su amigo. No hace falta averiguar, saben a qué me dedico. Me gusta vivir muy bien, aunque me siga el peligro.
Nosotros somos los Tucanes de Tijuana y nos vamos directamente. Adelante, échale, primo.
Hay que hacer ruido para que se mire la polvadera.
For more information on the Voice of San Joaquin, go to tvosj.org.
The Voice of San Joaquin and the Voice of Stockton presents Connections, Peace and Justice Radio with your host, Bruce Giudici.
And good evening. It's Monday evening, June 16th. We're here with Fred Sheil, who is the executive director, right, of S.T.A.N.D? Administrator of S.T.A.N.D, which works on housing issues here in Stockton and the San Joaquin County and Valley. And so this evening we're going to talk about housing and what the status is of housing for most everybody, and including low-income folks. And so, welcome, Fred.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, good to see you again. We haven't been discussing this for 9 months, I guess. So, wanted to have you back and find out what was going on now in the housing market, because where I work up at Amador Tuolumne Community Action Agency, we're seeing a lot of state money coming down, and also we're hearing about a lot of state money that is to come in the new budget. And so, but of course, when we're talking about state money as opposed to the magnitude of the problem, the problem is really much larger than what the state can handle. I mean, we're talking about $1 or $2 billion, and I don't know what the real estate market is in California, but it sure is more than that. So what we're seeing up in Amador County is there's these funds that are coming through from the state, and we can talk about the different types of funds, but generally we get state funding, and but there are very few places to rent. You might have the money, but it's very difficult to find folks or landlords who will rent to you. And so people are increasingly homeless and increasingly unable to find rentals that are affordable, much less finding any place that they could possibly buy. So anyway, we can discuss Amador Tuolumne, but around here in Stockton, what have you seen in terms of funding that's available, and also the ability of the city to move some of that through and to take some leadership? And you guys too. I mean, you guys. So what exactly does S.T.A.N.D do, and what have you done lately? What's in the last year or so?
Okay, I'm ignoring your last 8 questions.
Okay.
I'm going back to the first one.
Okay. There you go. We'll take it slow, Fred.
You were going back to the state money that's coming through.
Yeah.
And in Stockton, we need about 15,000 units.
Ooh, 15,000 units.
Low income and homeless people.
Yeah.
It's about $250,000 a unit.
Yeah.
So that comes out to $3.7 billion.
That's in this county.
Yes.
And
city.
In the city.
City.
And this is Stockton.
We need $3.7 billion in investment.
And the huge announcement was what, like $2 billion or something?
3.2, or was it 4.2 million? So you divide 3.2 million, even if it's 4.2, and you get, we only need 1,000 times
the amount.
1.2 thousand more than that.
Oh my, wow.
So yeah, 4 million sounds like a lot of money.
Yeah.
Don't mean shit.
Yeah.
Can I say shit
yeah.
on there?
Yeah, sure you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't mean, it's just,
doesn't mean it.
You talk about, it just,
yeah. Well, I think, you know, the amount of money is quite a lot in Stockton, but then also you talk about, I mean, Stockton isn't necessarily a rural area, but out where we are, we're sort of a rural area and sort of feel like we're sort of forgotten because the big urban areas are the ones who suck up all the money. LA and the Bay Area have all the population, they have all the votes. They're the ones who determine where funds go. And so a lot of folks are sort of feeling like the rural areas are being forgotten or left behind. Do you think that Stockton is still able to, I mean, you know, we seem to have a mayor who is vocal and is being seen as being, you know, a leader in development in the state. Do you think that that Stockton is getting its fair share, or do you think it's being overlooked like other rural areas?
The rural areas are getting hit even worse because the cost of housing in rural areas you would think would be lower than Stockton.
Right, because there's no jobs
They're
out
not.
there.
They're not.
Yeah.
It's there's been an exodus from the Bay Area for a long time.
Right.
It used to be that if you were a poor, when I first got to Stockton in the mid '80s, if you were an older couple, and if you were disabled, and you could go up to Valley Springs, where you live now.
Yes.
You could go up to Jackson or some of the other towns, and you could find a place to live that you could afford on Social Security and a little disability. You could do it.
Right.
That died in the 90s. You have to have a Bay Area income and a Bay Area sale of a home where you cleared $500,000 before you can buy something up in the foothills.
Well, and that's what we're seeing up where we are, is that you see a lot of people coming in with a lot of money, and if there is a sale, it's to folks who are coming in from out of the area with a lot of money.
Right.
And
if you just sold your home in the Bay Area for $2.7 million, it's just a little bitty piece of crap house in a cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
And you just sold it for $1.7 million.
Yeah. And
are you going to move to Stockton?
Yeah.
Or are you going to move to Jackson or San Andreas or somewhere?
Yeah, and buy
As
like
a retired person.
and buy like 50 acres.
Yeah.
And buy like a 4-bedroom, 3-bath mansion.
The conditions in the foothills is worse than it is in Stockton.
Yeah.
They just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
They don't want to admit that.
That there's a problem. And I mean, I guess there are the folks who don't want to admit there's a problem are the ones who actually have a place to stay. But the market economy is just sort of failing us here, because the market is just driving everybody out of ownership and moving them into rentals where it's supposedly cheaper. And there are sometimes some reasons why somebody would want to rent rather than own a place, especially after the 2008 crash. I mean, a lot of people feel like putting a whole lot of money into their house and finding it lose half of its value in a year is something that's a little bit too risky for them. If they miss a payment, the bank takes the house, or miss one or two payments, the bank takes the house back from them, and whatever investment they were making is totally gone, and also their credit is shot. And so a lot of people are trying to opt for rentals, which is always thought of as being a cheaper alternative. But trying to find a rental like what we're doing with our subsidized rental money is just impossible. It's just really difficult, and I'm sure that's the same down here in Stockton. There's a lack of housing stock, right?
The rental market is extremely difficult. It's a mess.
Yeah.
The mess we were in 2008 was single family, with prices going up so fast, and nobody could afford it.
Right.
And you could only afford it because you were getting these bizarre loans.
Right. They had a balloon payment that was you couldn't afford, but they said, well, what you'll do is you'll be able to refinance that 6 months down the road, but sign here so you can get this sweetheart deal.
They were true fake loans.
Yeah.
Fake loans, and they all went belly up.
Yeah, because
everybody who had one is gone. Probably almost half the real estate in Stockton converted into, I didn't think about this term, but they were unsustainable fake loans.
Yeah. Well, because the thing is that a lot of people had these homes and they were owning these homes, and then within 2 years, from 2007 to 2009, those homes were foreclosed on, and nobody had any money to buy the homes, so the values just dropped. And who was there to buy up all these properties?
Wall Street firms.
Yeah.
And those Wall Street firms, well, let's take Countrywide as an example.
Countrywide,
Remember that great mortgage
I used to have a
company?
mortgage with Countrywide.
Yeah. Well, who truly owned Countrywide at the time? Bank of America. They were the money behind Countrywide. So they were the leader of all this creative financing for single-family loans. So when the whole thing collapsed, the guys that ran Countrywide and the guys that were in Bank of America that were supporting Countrywide, they went out and formed their own individual hedge funds that went out and then bought up all the bad mortgages that were coming out of Countrywide and Bank of America.
Yeah, the ones that they knew exactly which ones.
They knew exactly what to go for. They know what they were worth, and they knew how they could get Bank of America to write them down.
Yeah.
So they did, and they were all bought up and turned into rentals. Yeah. So we saw this at 2008, this huge collapse of single-family ownership, and all these properties were moved into. And I don't have any firm numbers on this, but I think about half of all the properties in Stockton went into single-family homes, went into these extremely difficult loans.
Yeah.
So they all were set to go into foreclosure or have to be bought out.
Yeah.
So then all converted into rentals.
Yeah. Well, it was amazing how inexpensive homes were back in 2009. I mean, I was looking around going, man, if I had any money, I would buy some of these places because they were perfectly fine places. It's just that it's sort of like one of those situations where I would feel awful if I was doing that, because the thing is, on a short sale or on a if you feel like you're taking advantage of somebody who's sold their prized jewelry at a pawn shop, and then you're buying it. You feel like what you're doing is you're taking advantage of folks who've just lost everything.
I was one of the guys doing that.
Yeah. Well, but for Stan.
Yes.
Well, the thing is, you were turning around, and you weren't going to sell it sit on it for 5 years and then sell it for a monster profit, were you?
No, we were under the NSP program, the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, that part of the TARP.
Right.
That first Bush and then Obama both promoted. And to buy up a lot of these foreclosed homes and sell them back to low and moderate income families to try and stabilize these neighborhoods instead of them going back to hedge funds and real estate investment companies that were going to rent them out.
But you were much smaller than these huge real investment funds.
It was,
so you were able to save. It's sort of like in It's a Wonderful Life, you were able to save some of them, but Cotter sucked up the rest of them.
We were able to buy whatever the connected Countrywide and Bank of America people didn't want, or Chase, or Washington Mutual was part of it too, and they went under.
Right.
They had their headquarters here.
Yeah, right. Yep. That's right. Yeah, they all got blended into much larger banks that were, somehow avoided any sort of responsibility for any of the chaos that they caused. In fact, they just came right on through and are much more profitable. And I would guess on some of these properties that have been that were foreclosed on, I'm thinking that they're still sitting on quite a few of them, just leaving them empty, because on the ones that they are actually renting out or able to lease or even able to sell, they're able to make a whole lot more money if they're able to control the release of these properties rather than dumping them all at one time.
I think their original plan for buying up all these homes was to rent them out, hold on to them until the single-family for-sale market came back,
Right.
and then sell them for investment,
Right.
and make their profit that way.
Sure.
What they've discovered along the way is that because so much of the inventory is a strange term, all the
Yeah.
homes available,
Yeah.
of all the
All the
single-family
living
homes
spaces,
in Stockton, San Joaquin County,
Right.
they're not available in the market for sale anymore. So rents have been getting pushed up.
Right.
And so they're
Supply
finding
is restricted and
the
demand
rent,
is high, and so
rent
prices
is,
go up.
Yeah, rent is going up faster than the price of housing.
Right.
So they're holding on to them.
Sure.
So what does that do?
Sure.
You have no homes for sale. Standard, when I first started doing this back in the 90s, you look at the multiple listing service, there was anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 homes on the market for San Joaquin County.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now you look at it, it's about, no, that was for Stockton.
Mhm.
Now you look at it, it's about 400 to 500. So we're anywhere from 10% to 15% of a healthy turnover in homes for sale.
Right. And it's because a lot of the investors are holding on to it for rent. And you know,
Yes.
the thing that is kind of annoying is that, you know, when we're talking about the state monies that are coming down, and there's different pots of money, and some of them are for actual homelessness or preventing people from getting homeless. So homeless prevention funds, or there's something that is what they call rapid rehousing, which is monies that you pay to somebody to keep them from getting evicted and getting thrown out. And so both of these funds are going to landlords at and it can't be more than fair market value. Now HUD has a certain definition of what fair market value is, but there's different levels that you can subsidize a landlord. But what ends up happening is the public funds that are passed by the state end up going to landlords because there is no public housing, for one thing, and the other thing is that you it's impossible for you to use these funds to actually build any appreciable amounts of public housing because for one thing, where we live, a lot of folks don't want public housing in their neighborhoods, and another thing is it's horribly expensive because land, not only is our houses expensive, but land is expensive.
Yes.
Yeah, and yes.
So let's go back to 2008, 2009, 2010, when people lost their homes and there's a lot of vacancies after the housing collapse. So landlords of apartment buildings were more than willing to take Section 8 vouchers from the Housing Authority for low-income families.
Right.
And we see this the real estate market goes through cycles. Anywhere from 7 to 10 years is normal. That's a healthy market. Since this creative financing of the 2000s, this market has gotten extended out. I don't even know what it is anymore. So when the market goes up, no landlords, apartment owners don't want to take Section 8 because they can get more from the market rent.
Right.
Market collapse, they're dying to take Section 8 because now Section 8 pays more
guaranteed.
So now we're in a situation of now the rents are up. HUD statistical processes and public transparency and everything takes time, and the market's moving much faster than the HUD process. So market rents are higher. So there isn't. We get calls 2 or 3 times a day from people that have very low-income people. These are very low-income people that have got a Section 8 voucher in their hands, and they can't find a landlord to take it.
Right.
They got 6 months to find a landlord before they lose it, and they're desperate, and there's nobody taking them.
Nobody. Yeah.
Huge percentage. I haven't heard the most recent from Peter Ragsdale, the CEO of the Housing Authority, but it's a majority of folks that wait in line for 4, 5, 6 years to get a voucher to subsidize their rent, and then they can't find a landlord
and they hope run around hoping that they can find a place in a 6-month period of time.
Right.
Where it would be nice if that Section 8 voucher
even
were
the slumlords, so these places that don't even meet basic health and safety, aren't even taking them anymore. Before they would take them, oh, okay, I'll fix the damn shower. Okay, your tub's leaking. All right, goddamn it, I'll fix it grudgingly just so they can get the better rent. They're not even taking them anymore.
Yeah, because they can get it from somebody else who's really, who's able to maybe get one of these rapid rehousing vouchers.
So you think with all this market pressure, I'm going to answer your next question for you. Ask your next question for you.
Why aren't houses being built?
Yeah, why aren't apartment buildings being built? If rents are going up, so God, the market, supply and demand tells you there should be a
signal.
An
it's
apartment
a market
house
signal.
on every building going up every corner.
That's right.
There ain't nothing being built except for higher income rents.
Yeah, right. Well, that's been the way apartment complexes and duplexes and folks that people can afford, housing that people can afford, have not been built. I don't know if it's similar to the vehicles that are being built. I mean, there's a whole lot more profit in building an SUV than there is in building a 3-cylinder Metro that I used to have.
Okay, listening audience, I got to tell you something about Bruce. Contrary to what Bruce talks about, Bruce is really an economist.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He was an economist, an undergraduate, ag economist in graduate school. He knows supply and demand. Yeah. He's just a guy that bleeds for everybody. Yeah. But he understands this very deeply.
The thing that really bugs me about it is that this is a place where the market fails. This is where, where
it's not working.
Right.
Why is the question?
Because the market signals are saying is that you reward people. There's a profit motive, and there's more profit in making high-end homes, high-end vehicles, high-end anything. Because for one thing, the well-off people, if people haven't noticed, have gotten a lot more money in the last 20, 30, 50 years than regular folks. And so they have more what they call effective demand, which is cash in your pocket, as opposed to real demand, which is people who are homeless. And so in this case, the people always talk about the magic of the market. Well, the magic is only magical for people who have money. Because that's where the signals are hitting, and that's why.
How did Adam Smith put it? There's 3 things there has to be equal access to.
I don't know.
Has to be equal access to. Adam Smith
is the father of economics.
The Darwin of economics.
Wealth of nations.
Wealth of nations, yes. Yeah. Free access to capital, free access to labor, and free access to information, meaning that everybody out there has equal access to information, capital, and labor.
There you go.
Now, if you look at Wall Street,
and that's what a market.
It's all based on controlling information and making the most and screwing somebody else.
That's right. Yeah. Right.
So, the housing market's not working.
Yeah, because in a totally competitive, perfectly competitive world, yes, you would have results that would be fair and even, but we don't live in that world. In fact, we live in a world where people are where we're forced to accept these powerful relationships as they are, and then after having been bludgeoned with those conditions for years and years and decades and centuries, we're forced to say, oh, I guess that's just how the market works. That's why I'm a capitalist. It really is amazing to me that people embrace this capitalism, this ism of capital, which is accumulated wealth, rather than socialism, which is the ism of people. And you would think that the economy would be something that folks would want to sort of craft around people's needs rather than the needs of capital. But of course, in housing, which is one aspect of capital, this is what we're seeing now. We're just seeing a marketplace just sort of run amok.
We're seeing a market that doesn't work. there's many
It works for some. It
there's
works
many
for
markets
well-off
that
people.
do work very, very well. And housing right now, the market's completely distorted.
Yeah.
And where is it coming from? I can't say I know. Prior to the creation of these insane Wall Street
products, yeah,
investment products that
really
completely distorted
RITs
single family,
right.
we're just continuing to see the waves and repercussions of that in housing. It hasn't washed through.
Yeah.
The fact that they allowed after 2008, when these Wall Street firms weren't allowed to collapse because it was going to destroy capitalism. They all should have been buried.
Right. Well, yeah.
They all should have just crushed and swallowed up in their own. What was the movie? Brad Pitt and Money.
I don't know. The Wolf of Wall Street?
No, it wasn't The Wolf of Wall Street. It was the one that even Brad Pitt was in for a little while, and talking about the whole housing collapse, and you had Seymour in it and the rest of these guys. Just the incredible greed involved in it.
Yeah, I know.
We didn't allow those banks to collapse and those investment firms to collapse. And that's what needed to happen to wash all this out.
Is they lived and they were able to support the folks who ended up, keeping their funds, keeping their ability to invest, to buy low, and now they're sitting on it and waiting for the price to go even further high, and then they'll sell high. And so this marketplace is. I just heard a recent speech by Bernie Sanders, of all people. And he was just talking about how, there's corporate socialism and there's democratic socialism. And this corporate socialism is the thing that supports corporations and bails them out when they're in trouble. And it's socialism for the rich and it's rugged individualism for the poor. I think that was a quote from Martin Luther King that he used.
Got my guns.
There you go. Yeah, so it was a very good speech at George Washington University by Bernie Sanders last Wednesday. So you got to check it out because it was really moving. It was like a 40-minute deal, but it was a good synopsis of what has happened in the last 30, 50 years to people. To just regular, ordinary people, and how we're all just sort of struggling just to survive now. And they're a very, very small group of people who are not just struggling to survive. They're just doing very well. So.
And that gets us back to we need $3 to $4 billion to fix the housing crisis in this county, and we're getting $4 million from the new heat funds out of the state's last year budget to solve. Now, I'm being a little sarcastic here. The state knows it's not going to solve all the problems, but for those people that hear, oh, you're getting $4 million to spend on homeless people. Oh, that's more than they deserve, number one. And you should be able to fix that problem overnight.
Yeah.
We're doing it right now. We, the Housing Authority with Peter Ragsdale, Bill Mendelson with Central Valley Housing, and Joe Lynn over at the Shelter for the Homeless. And my God, the amount of staff hours that we have in to try and purchase one property on the 1600 block of Turnpike.
Okay.
Jeez.
Yeah. Is that like a motel there, or is it a...
No, it's a vacant lot.
Okay, vacant lot.
That's been subdivided into 7 lots.
Oh, wow.
And... I don't know.
So is that down by 5th or on Turnpike?
It's just west of Edison High School.
Okay, right.
On Turnpike.
Right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's trying to buy anything in these older...
Well, where our version of the ATCA is where I work, that is administering the heat funds up in Amador, Tuolumne, in the continuum of care that operates in Amador, Calaveras, Tuolumne, and Mariposa counties, and we got 1.2 million of HEAP funds.
That's more than you need.
That's right. It sure was. So we decided.
What do you have? 2-3 homeless people?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay.
These are pretty tiny. Well, that's why we got 1.2 rather than 4 million.
Yeah.
And so, but it was but in any case, what we did was split it up amongst the 4 counties evenly. So
to cover 4 counties.
Amador got 300. Amador got 300,000. Calaveras got 300,000. Tuolumne got 300,000, and Mariposa got 300,000.
You're getting way too much money.
Way too much, yeah.
Yeah.
So
you can help 1.5 persons.
Yeah, and a problem is that I guess you could in small areas like ours, you wouldn't have to have declared. The supervisors are supposed to declare a shelter emergency in order to access these funds. But if you're small enough, or we were able to not have to declare a shelter emergency in order to get these funds, but the next batch of heat funds we will. So the thing is that I think only Mariposa County declared a shelter emergency because the other 3 counties don't think that there is any homeless problem in their area. They think that if you build these places, then folks are going to come up from outside of the area and they're going to move up to, Jackson or to San Andreas, where they don't know anybody, where there are no jobs, where they have no connections with anybody. And somehow there's some idea that somebody from Stockton is going to move up to Jackson to live in a homeless shelter, which, I guess could happen. But generally, the homeless folks, the reason why we got these HEAP funds is because there's something called the point in time count that happens every January, which is not a very great way to determine how many people you have homeless at any given time. But I mean, it's a count, and it's consistent. And so based on that, that's why we got the $1.2 million. And so now we have these little projects, and they're really pretty small. One is going to build or pay for part of an apartment complex. So we're going to get 2 apartment units out of the $300,000.
Yay!
Calaveras County is going to build like 10 tiny homes. And so that will be for in different communities in Calaveras County. Yeah, Mariposa is going to work on paying for part of a shelter. I don't know how, we still have to figure out what the details are on that. And Amador County is building shower and laundry facilities for their homeless folks. But it's not housing, because for one thing, people don't want to have homeless or low-income housing next to them, and that's pretty much the basic bottom line. The local supervisors are not really interested in trying to solve a problem that their constituents aren't clamoring to solve. And so
their constituents are clamoring to solve it.
Yeah.
Get these damn homeless people away from me. Clean up that crap. I don't want to see that.
That's right.
You know how much garbage they left behind?
Here's the stack of bus tickets, and now can go to Sacramento or Stockton. That's the solution to the homeless.
Or we'll just deputy sheriff here. Drive these.
That's what they do.
Drive these boys down the hill.
Exactly right. That's what they do. take them to the border
where they got services.
There, yeah, right there on the border of Amador and Sacramento County. All the services.
Our county mental health can't handle this.
That's right. Yeah. So it is pretty. It's just hypocritical in areas where people talk about solving your own problems locally, and that we don't need any outside help, and so here. There is an opportunity to actually try to solve this problem. But I guess the solution that us rural folk have come up with is to get rid of these people. To move them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah,
they're not they're not local people. They're coming from somewhere else. They're the others.
It's just dealing with the symptom, not the cause.
They can't be mentally ill people created in our own little.
That's right. Or
Amador community.
Yeah, and we don't have any drug problem here.
No,
there's no methamphetamine. There's nothing like that.
We don't grow any weed here.
We sure don't. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
it's.
Yeah. We don't have any opium. We don't have any, we don't have any domestic violence.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's there's a
trauma.
Yeah. So I think at some point people are going to start having to recognize that the way we start dealing with problems is by starting to deal with the problems. Is that we don't just pass them on. try to give them up to other folks. And and one nice thing is that there does seem to be a certain amount of political will at the state level. The people are that the current administration and legislators are not just taking a budget surplus and giving it back in tax rebates. They are talking about trying to solve some housing situations.
To be fair to the foothill communities and the mountain communities, those would be very affordable places to live still if the Bay Area and the coastal area home prices hadn't exploded.
Right.
Because people selling there and able to move and retire up in the hills, has driven it all there.
Second
and
homes
it's
in
created
Arnold and Murphy,
cultural
for sure.
backlash and all the rest of it.
Right.
As I try and be kind,
Yeah.
I'm trying.
Yeah. In the last 2 or 3 or 4 years,
I mean, kudos for that.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. It's just when you see the prices in our neighborhood are not as high as they were in 2008, but they're still pretty darn high.
It's still not livable.
No. Right. And we're not looking to move or anything, but right. And in where I live, I think those houses are probably going for like maybe 300,000. And we bought it for like 135. Probably sell it for 135 when the thing crashes the next time around. There was a point where it was worth the 135 back in 2008.
No, when you're set to retire, it'll
right.
be crashing back down to 135, and you'll be lucky to get out without losing your wife.
That's right. That's right. Well, we have to downsize at that point.
Yeah.
Get ourselves a
fewer dogs.
Yeah, get a van, to sort of move around. Yeah. But yeah, so what's going on with does the city of Stockton or the county of San Joaquin? I mean, I know that there's state funds, but is there any ability on
the continuum of care where the county of San Joaquin has been doing a good job.
And so your continuum of care is just the county. It's not like more than one county.
Correct.
Okay.
They hired Adam Cheshire to be the homeless czar, for lack of a better
CAO
term.
Or whatever,
yeah, and he's done a great job.
Okay.
It's been driven a lot by Kathy Miller as a board of supervisor, trying to educate the other board of supervisors. Most are on board.
Most of the board?
There's still a lot of resistance for the more rural areas that same as the foothills just want to, the
bus tickets to San Francisco here.
Yeah, no, the bus tickets from Escalon and Ripon and Lodi, just send them to Stockton.
Sure,
because that's where, that's where services are. That makes much more sense, doesn't it?
That's where the action is.
But the Adam and most of the board, I think, are really trying to do the right thing. We are getting about, how much are we getting? We're trying to build 18 units of permanent housing for the homeless that'll house between 36 families or individuals. And again, I'm permanently out of transitional housing or out of the shelters.
Would this be like apartment complex, or would it be like duplexes, or?
We're buying lots, parcels that we can build a small house on, and then an additional ADU, they call them, additional dwelling unit, in the back or to the side. That can be done modular, so we can get it done quickly and as cheaply as possible.
Is this for those HEAP funds?
This is all with HEAP funds, yes.
The 4.2 million.
Yes.
Great. Now you have to spend half of that by the end of the year, right? Is that going to happen? It's going to be hard for us to have ours happen. I mean, you think that there'd be
I think we'll make it, but man, it's okay. I wasn't going to bitch about the city of Stockton, but I'm going to slide into it a little bit. The city keeps saying, the city council, to their credit, now they say a homelessness issue is number one. City staff says homelessness issue is number one, but those of us, myself, Peter Ragsdale, Bill Mendelson, Joy Lynn, we don't get the feeling that staff feels that it's priority number one. It's like whenever they get around to it, or a lot of problems come up.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And a lot of property owners are not just want to sell.
Right.
They don't care. A lot of issues.
They'd rather want to deal with things where you're not getting a whole lot of resistance.
Just because we're buying a seven lot development and suddenly there's a 8-inch Cal water line that runs the whole length of it. Oh my God, where did that come from? Gee, what a surprise!
Yeah, what a surprise! Yeah. It's in the city.
Yeah,
It's not like it's not like
the city was supposed to have taken care of this in 1993 along with the property owner. Nothing's been done along with Cal Water. Everybody's going, Fred, Peter, Bill, if you really want to buy this, you got to fix the problem.
Really?
Really? Yeah.
How much is that going to cost?
I don't know.
Oh man, is that?
We just discovered a little pond out in the property. Cattails. When you see cattails growing in the middle of a vacant lot, what does that tell you? Want to see the picture?
That's a pond. Yeah, it's a little swamp there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it has nothing to do with Cal Water.
No.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So that's one of the.
That's priority number one.
Right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so you're breaking ground. Have you already?
I had to do that since I already kind of trashed Amador and Tuolumne and everybody else.
Yeah. Well,
nobody wants to deal with this. Society-wide, we've all buried our heads.
Yeah.
And we're just waiting for it to go away.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I get 7-8 calls a day of going, I'm working. My husband and my wife were both working, even above minimum wage jobs, and we can't find a place to live.
My Section 8 voucher is expiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you got?
What do you got? And say, well, I got a water main here that nobody wants to fix.
Yeah, you want to live in some cattails?
Yeah, really. Yeah,
camp out.
Yeah, if we really wanted to, if we really wanted to solve the problem, one thing is money, but another thing is streamlining processes, and also just making it easier for developers to fix up stuff, to move into places more quickly rather than throwing up roadblocks. Because people who are homeless, it's not just a matter of inconvenience. In some cases, it's it can be life and death. It can definitely be traumatic for children and young folks, and also just and for the parents. Living in a shelter is not pleasant.
To be fair to the city, ever since Prop 13 was passed in 1978, city departments have been largely forced to live on the income they bring in. So for a planning department,
permits and things,
they can only afford enough staff based on the permits that they bring in. When you're looking at an old city like Stockton with lots of vacant parcels, from residential to commercial to industrial, spread all across the older section of the cities, owned by owners that have held onto them forever, thinking that,
they're going to cash in on that someday.
There's gold bars buried underneath that.
Right,
we just haven't dug the right hole.
That's right. Yeah, 20 years from now, there's going to be a gusher.
My God,
I'm going to make a ton of money on that.
Yeah. Now if we dig down another 400 feet,
that's right.
With platinum too. I'm exaggerating, and I make fun of it.
No,
but no, they're nuts. They're family trusts, and they think this stuff, and they're perfectly willing to hold on to these vacant parcels of land with all their problems, with all the water lines running through them and the little ponds going out and everything else, forever, until they think they get the big payoff that their family demands.
Now, our housing director was saying that, our housing director was saying that there's, and I saw it in the paper, where Huntington Beach was sued and was required to pay some penalty because they had not made available that land that was owned by the county was not made available for use. So is that something that could possibly, where the county does own land, and if it's sitting on it and not using it for housing, is that something that could be, the state could,
I don't know about the county owning land, to tell you the truth. I'm aware of city parcels, but
yeah, because up where we are, we don't have any cities. It's only counties, and so the counties own these lands, and that is a real possibility. Is that the counties are going to be forced to say, essentially, what is your plan for these properties? And if it's not housing, then there has to be some sort of other plan, alternative plan, and maybe some sort of commercial or something like that. We just had a huge Kmart become empty about at least a year ago, on the way out of town in Jackson, and it's a huge empty building.
That big ass thing is
it's empty.
On the way into Jackson.
Yeah, it's empty.
Down below on 88 when you're pulling in?
We're on the right-hand side, right next to the Walmart. The Walmart put them out of business. So there's this big Kmart and this huge building. And we have we do not have a single shelter in Amador County.
What do you need a shelter for? Bus tickets are cheap. To Stockton are cheaper. You're going to spend real money to help it?
There you go. Well, it wouldn't be. I mean, the thing is the place has been vacant for months.
Foreigners.
Yeah. So it's but I'm sure that they're somehow thinking that there's going to be somebody who's going to take advantage of that huge. I mean, it's a huge building.
Yeah. No, as a developer of doing this, it'd be very expensive to do. Doable?
To retrofit?
Yes.
Yeah.
It could be done.
Yeah.
But you think it's cheap when you think you got a vacant building. What would it take?
Yeah.
How many bathrooms are there in a Kmart?
Like maybe 3.
Yeah. So now you're going to put a couple thousand people in there. How many bathrooms do you need? Even say a couple hundred.
Yeah, I would say a couple
How
hundred.
many bathrooms do you need?
Yeah,
the kitchen facilities. What's the most expensive thing to build in a house?
Yeah.
Is kitchens and bathrooms.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you do that, you got to have fire requirements. You got to have sprinklers. You got to have all the rest of the stuff. So.
Yeah. But there's this huge parking lot, so people could park there if they had a vehicle, and then there would be a safe place to park. And then you could have porta potties on the outside, so that people could at least have some place to go. There's, I mean, if in a triage sense,
it's doable if somebody is willing to take the liability risks.
Yeah.
And right now.
Yeah.
In California, I don't see cities, counties, anybody willing to take the liability risk.
Yeah.
Which is really pathetic.
Well, see, that's something
pathetic.
that our agency, we should probably be stepping up and doing that. I mean, we're the Community Action Agency. Those are those are created in 1965 by the Johnson administration to be the low-income, the poverty agencies for every community in.
Sir, I thought we killed all of you. No. There's one left.
No, there's more than just one.
They were all killed in Stockton.
Yeah.
In the Central Valley.
Yeah, I know.
They survive in the hills.
Yeah. They're
Damn.
Yeah.
We gotta send the boys up there.
There are a few community action agencies still around, and
I thought
no.
I thought they were all complete.
No.
I know you've told me this before, but
I worked for one of those places.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that is the charge of that agency, is to be the anti-poverty agency. And so that's what
who can absorb the risk.
And because the thing is it's not a county. In fact, when they were first designed, they were not supposed to be associated with any local political group, because they figured it could be co-opted and it could be turned into something like a county. Yeah, right. So the thing is that what we so we're sort of. And that's why we administer the HEAP funds. That's why we administer the cash funds, because we're seen as being sort of separate, and we don't have to. We're not.
Apolitical.
We're not the turf of So you don't have Amador County beating up on Tuolumne, beating up on Calaveras. It's like just all beat up on Atka, that we're fine because
beat up on Bruce.
That's right. So, but community action agencies are things that there are in rural areas. There are.
I did not know.
Yeah, they still work. Yeah, so.
No, they're tremendous agencies.
Yeah.
I just wish they survived in the rest of the urban areas.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, and in some cases they're called something else, but still in a lot of cases they
generally got converted into JTPAs, Joint Training Partnership Acts, and then they got converted into CalWorks with the welfare reform of the 90s.
Yeah.
They generally called CalWorks.
Yeah, and then Head Starts would have probably, spun off and done their own thing because they would have been part of the CAA. And so we still have Head Start as part of our agency, and we run a couple homeless shelters, but very small, and they're family shelters, one in each county. And then we have a food bank, and then we do weatherization services
well,
that sort of thing.
I get why private developers don't want to do it, because there's so much societal confusion, to be kind, about helping the homeless and helping in all that.
Well, and that's why
but that's what public agencies are for, to absorb this risk.
Right.
And it's the money's there if the different agencies would work together.
Yeah.
But all the agencies are set up, back to what you were talking about, Bernie Sanders and everybody else.
Yeah.
The agents are by and large set up to work against each other.
Yeah.
And that's what Reinvent Stockton is trying to do, working with Tubbs, and I have been for quite a while. And his original vision was to break down that siloization.
Yeah.
All these agencies get siloed into their own little tasks.
Yeah, into their own funding source and their own.
And if we could get them to work together in cooperation, a lot of this could get solved. But that doesn't happen by accident. They're pitted against each other on purpose.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. There's pots of money that everybody competes for, and if we don't get it, then somebody else is going to get it. And whereas if we all cooperatively decided, let's all take a look at, and that's one nice thing about this continuum of care up where we are, up in these 4 counties, is that you do have an idea of well, how are we going to deal with this common population of homeless folks who go from county to county, and how are we going to provide services in a cohesive way, and keep track of these folks through the HMIS, through the information system that keeps track of people, so that you can actually try to solve their problems on an individual basis, solve the family problem, rather than just saying, oh well, we put them up for a night, and then I'll count them, and that's something I can charge for now. There has to be an overall, and that's reinventing Stockton. Is that is that an organization? Or
well, it's a concept, that Mayor Tubbs started when he was a councilman from the South Side. And just shifting a little bit here. Peter Ragsdale pointed out, along with Bill Mendelson, that Stockton has had, even though we've always had homelessness, we've had a pretty good functioning system, thanks to the work of the shelters being in place, with Reverend Bob Green, working with yourself, establishing working with Bill Mendelson, creating the shelter, single shelter for the homeless,
and then
getting St. Mary's built. Thank to Father Ignatius de Groot at St. Mary's Church,
and
David Brewer, and we've got a good tradition here. We have more shelter space than a lot of cities have for the homeless. We really do. We have more services for the homeless. And then when Bill Mendelson left the single shelter for the homeless and started Central Valley Low Income Housing Corporation, handling the transitional housing. So they go from the shelter, they go into transitional housing, and they have 6 months to a year there. It's a good system. It works. We got a pipeline going, and then from there they get a Section 8 voucher, and they go into permanent housing. It should be working fine. It did work pretty well. We've always had homeless, but it wasn't growing.
But at least there's a process.
The pipeline was moving people through it, even for our very poor community. It all died when no property owners were willing to take Section 8. Peter Ragsdale comes into town 2 or 3 years ago, learns about their problem from Bill, and Bill goes, we couldn't get enough Section 8 vouchers from the Housing Authority. And Peter goes, how many do you want? I'll give you everything you need. What do you need? So they got all the vouchers they need. There's still no landlords that'll take the dang things. So now the whole pipeline is plugged. The problem is having enough housing supply, apartments, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, anything that the nonprofit sector can control and take these Section 8 vouchers or project-based vouchers.
Well, I would just be very interested to see if, going forward into this, presidential candidate campaign and beyond, if there's got to be some groundswell for not just to subsidize rentals, but to actually build public housing. And Sierra Vista and Conway homes are maybe not the greatest example of how to build those things, but I mean, I'm sure there is, there are lessons to be learned from what those public housing areas.
All right, the lessons to be learned are what Peter Ragsdale is doing, completely rebuilding those things right now. Sierra Vista is almost in the process of being completely rebuilt.
Great.
Conway Homes will be completely rebuilt.
That's great.
They've already rebuilt Thornton, and they're working on Tracy. So there's great examples of what can be done.
And so the thing is if on the federal level, if we can say, well, how are we going to afford this sort of stuff? Well, there's been a lot of money thrown away on tax cuts that we're still financing. We didn't even cut. It was a tax cut that was financed. It wasn't even taking a surplus and giving it back. And there's also all this military wastage that happens. That people, how are we gonna afford to do this? Well, we can build homes. We can take people who are currently building some things that are hopefully we'll never use, bombs, and build things that we know people need, which are homes, and just turn that investment into public investment that stays in our communities. Because when you spend that money in Stockton and pay a carpenter or a plumber or somebody who works here, that's gonna boost the economy here. The multiplier effect and all that, where you have money coming in and actually it comes in from outside. So it's actually like you're exporting stuff. It's like you're bringing funds in, like food stamps or any sort of injection of funds from outside of the area. It's going to stimulate the economy. So, we have to sort of demand that sort of perspective, because right now what you're saying and what I'm seeing up in Amador County is that we just don't have the housing stock. I mean, we have the demand, but we just don't have, we don't have the place to put people. And then not only that, there's also the services once people are in those situations. If they have mental health issues or chemical issues or any sort of, or haven't been employed or need some training or whatever, where these folks live, especially if it's a congregate type of thing, you can actually start to work at the cause of a problem rather than just dabbing at the symptom.
I thought that's what we built prisons for.
I see. Yeah, but we can't put too much. We can't put more money into the prisons than the schools, because
that was sarcasm.
That would be wrong. Of course it would.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, then and
the services are 1/10 the cost of prison.
Yeah. To solve the problem.
We're willing to throw people in jail at $100,000 a year. We're not willing to hire a probation officer at, the probation officer costs us $70,000, $80,000 a year, and he can closely supervise 20 people, which brings it down to about $15,000 a year per incarcerated person on parole. But we'd rather put him in prison for over $100,000.
And not just
that makes sense.
And not just that. I mean, mental health therapists or any sort of alcohol or drug treatment, or in congregate settings. I just think people have to start thinking about how we want to solve the problem rather than just trying to deny that it exists.
We like revenge better than solutions.
Yeah, it works. Yeah, so anyway, we've been talking with Fred Sheil here on all sorts of things, but mostly on housing. And I'm hoping that we can get together again where the new HEAP and CASH funds have ended up, and seeing, how well your turnpike thing is happening and whatever happened to that Calwater pipe thing. I just intrigued by
the cattail marsh out in the middle of the lot.
Yeah.
And we're selling. S.T.A.N.D has 4 other inner city lots that we're selling to the group for homeless that we're going to build. Single family homes and other little granny flat things, and we're going to do as much as we can.
Yeah, and then there's going to be another round of heat funds coming through.
Yep.
And so that will be another injection of funds into this area. So
I just want to make it clear, when I do this at Stand, when Peter does it at Peter Ragsdale at the Housing Authority, when Bill Mendelson is doing this at the Shelter for the Homeless, when Joe Lynn is doing this at I mixed them up. At the shelter, none of our agencies are making a dime on this.
Right.
If we can get any staff time paid back, great. But if not, we don't. We're just doing this to get more units spent. Yeah. So when folks come out and criticize us that we're making big money on this and everything else, it's like that's a load of
that's not
horse seed.
Yeah, that's not what's happening.
Piles.
Exactly right. So we're trying to counter the profit motive here and trying to supply what is needed in this community, which is more low-income housing. So thank you very much, Fred.
Thank you.
Bruce Giudici with Peace and Justice Connections. Thank you very much, and good night.
Good night, all.